Hello, everyone. My name is Elizabeth White, and I'm going to be leading our discussion today. I am the author of a book called 55 Underemployed and Faking Normal, and I am an advocate for older adults facing uncertain work and financial insecurity. And I have with me the director of Duty Free, Sian-Pierre Regis, and the star of this film, his mother, Rebecca Danagelis. Am I saying it correctly?
That's absolutely correct. Thank you.
Before we jump in, let me first also thank Southern Circuit for hosting this conversation, and thank South Arts, a regional organization in partnership with the National Endowment for the Arts, for funding it. And thank our screening partners across the South for making the screening of this movie possible. And thank you in the audience for being interested and engaged. I've seen this movie now, I was counting 6 times. And I still react to it in an emotional way. It is so tender and so poignant. And it's been getting traction now. I see that it opened in 30 theaters across the country over Mother's Day, that you've been in the media, everything from CBS Sunday Morning to USA Today, that you ranked #1 on Apple News, all of this happening. I want to go back to the beginning. So first, Sian-Pierre, is this your first film?
Yes, it is my first film. I was a journalist before this at CNN and MTV and other places. And it's just the longest form story I've ever told. And frankly, it fell into my lap, and I'm so grateful that it did.
And I think what's amazing to me, because this is an emotional story. So as a filmmaker, from a filmmaker's perspective, how do you stay both outside the story and inside the story? You're telling a story about your mother. You're clearly, the two of you are very close. She's going through something that's very upsetting, and you have to be objective and subjective at the same time. So kind of through your filmmaker lens, how do you do that? How do you walk that line?
Such a great question, and so hard to do, and not just in the filming of it, but also in its inevitable release and success. How do you, as a filmmaker, pull yourself away from success or failure of a story that you feel so tied to? So yeah, it was really hard. I mean, there were so many times during filming that I just wanted to put my camera down and give my mom a hug, or, tell her that everything was going to be okay. And that would have been the easy thing to do. But instead, I decided to keep the camera rolling, tears rolling down my face behind the camera, because there was something inside of me that knew that if one person could connect with what my mom was going through, then I had done my job. If one older person in particular could see themselves in my mom and in her story, that things could get better, that we are all struggle through hard times, then I had done my job. And that's really what kept me going, was to say, like, this isn't so much for me, though it was emotional therapy. It was really important for me throughout to let people know that we do not suffer alone, that we all suffer, but that we all, with advocates, have the potential to soar. And that's what kept me going. Yeah.
No, it's so important, this point that this is not an outlier story. There are millions of Americans, and you and I have talked often about the data. right now, nearly half of the people who are 55, by the time they turn 65, are going to be looking at downward mobility, poverty, or near poverty conditions. So Rebecca, you were the star in the film. It is a film about what you're going through. What was that like for you to sort of open your heart publicly to be both inside and outside of this film?
Well, you won't see me any different on film than you'll see me in the house with Sian-Pierre. There were no cameras around. He showed me just as I am.
Yeah.
Even myself, I didn't realize sometimes how I am, how I can be snippy, I can be sarcastic, that came out. But every word you see on the film, none of it was scripted. Just exactly how it happened. To start out with, he was filming with his phone. He's just watching me trying to do stuff on the computer, for example. And then later on, when it got a bit much with traveling and stuff, then he had a camera crew. But it's a normal thing between us. It's nothing he hadn't seen before. The way I am, maybe I had never exposed my vulnerability so much. He hasn't seen that. I never had to. I never dreamed in a million years this would happen to me.
And just quickly on a filmmaker point, we started off with years and years of trust between us, right? My mom always knew that I was on her team and that she was on mine. I knew that. And I think that really allowed for vulnerability to flow both ways. And, as a filmmaker, not so many people will get the chance to tell a personal story where the trust is already built. And I think it would have been a lot harder for somebody to come in and shoot this story and show it in a way that felt so human at its core. And that was because of the trust that we had with each other.
Yeah, so it's really was, I found an intimate portrayal. Talk to me about the bucket list, because that was sort of a centerpiece. And I think the most hopeful aspect of the film in terms of at any age, you can look to the future and you can think about well-being and your grounding and happiness and what would that take. So how did the list come together?
Well, the list came together when, actually before I got fired, I was getting, as a woman, you have intuition. You know when Snippy down the street said something, and she talked to Martha, but you know that woman's intuition. I felt there was something not right. I thought it was fun, but I couldn't see what it was. And I was going to say, there's something not right here. And then it got was, he said, Mom, you need a rest. You need to get away. He said, let's play hooky. So we did. We went to, what did we do?
We went cow milking.
We went cow milking. That was the first thing. And then, of course, I got fired. And then, well, let's make Mom, why don't you make a list of all the things you couldn't do when you were working 24 hours a day? Make the list and we'll do it. That's how it started. And so I made a list of the cow milking, the Boston Marathon, which I saw everybody coming at home. I wonder why are they dragging themselves? I had to experience it. So I did that. And then you hear about George Bush jumping from the airplane. Oh, well, we put it on there. I wasn't really gung-ho on the idea of jumping from the plane at 12,000 feet, but I went along with it. I
still hold my breath.
Right.
Oh, yes.
So it was a mix of things that both she had heard different guests who had come through the hotel to do at their leisure that she wanted to do. And then some were, obviously, as you saw, made up for moments in life that she wanted to reclaim.
So the film has three big themes. So one of them is really around ageism. And this point that what happened to your mom is happening to many people. There is a a wonderful study by the Urban Institute and ProPublica, which says basically that in our 50s, Americans in their 50s, that 52% are going to lose their jobs at some point. And of that number, only 10% will ever again get a job commensurate in pay and status with the one they left. So, that person you see at Trader Joe's bagging groceries is not maybe there because they want to be. And I know, Rebecca, when you went back to work, it was in a position that was lower than the one that you had when you were working. So talk to us about going back to work as an older adult. I thought the film really captured that process, the technology, these job fairs that make us crazy, the unemployment offices that make us crazy. Talk a little bit about that experience.
Well, of course. I mean, I'd sent out resumes. I actually got hired by a person who used to work for me in that position that I took a very nice hotel chain, the best people. And but going through that, you send your resumes and people think, if you're trying to film, for example, and talk about ageism online, and it goes down, date last graduated high school, scroll down. And then it stops at 1979. Well, hello. So you have to miss that. You're trying to put it in stuff. So you go on to the next question. Application incomplete. Please refer on the little red X. And this is how they get you. And then you'll send them in. People have I'm 80. I am a lucky one. I can walk, I can talk. I've had an education. I don't need a wheelchair. So many people, I speak English. So many people don't have the advantages that I've had. But people think when you're 80, they're going to go. They don't give you a chance for an interview even. I had one hotel gave me an interview because I don't think they know who I was. I don't know in the Boston area, but I got the same letter I was having the interview to say, we're sorry to inform you that the position that for which you applied has been filled by an in-house employee. That's okay, except I was going for the interview that day.
Right.
So I went to the interview. Not a word of mention of the letter. But then I did get a letter later who we decided to go with somebody in-house.
Yeah, there are just so many ways. I mean, to watch it too, Elizabeth, as a young person, we're not taught to age in this country, right? Like we're not taught about aging and what happens when you're older. And so many people are just confronted by being older when something sort of terrible happens to them and they're not able to get back on their feet. But I was lucky, I think, to be a sidekick in watching what was going on with my mom. And, everything from, Facebook, we know of, allowing for job seekers to be able to only advertise to, people 18 to 34, 18 to 42, to these websites being coded not with older people in mind. I mean, it took a digital native like myself to watch my mom struggle to get from one website to the next because they're all built differently, because they're not intuitive. And so just by way of the way that they are coded, older people are being left out. And, I think that is by design. And so it's just really, really unfortunate. And it's my goal now to have this film shown, particularly to young people, so that we know the writing is on the wall, that we too will get old, right? It's the only protected class that we'll all share. We all won't be Black or gay or man or women or trans, but we all will get old. And so if we are not fighting for those folks that have come ahead of us, what will happen to us? That's a question that I want to linger with younger people.
And I think the other thing, a dear friend of mine who I think Lindsay is 33, but in the tech industry, that ageism starts much earlier. Forget 50. I'm talking 37, 38. And with women, as we know, it starts much earlier. So to your point, this is not just, for people who are 55, 60 and older, their problem. this is something that will, impact all of us. The other big theme then is economic security. And that's where they're actually sort of linked, because if people can't work because they're being pushed out from ageism, then they are vulnerable financially. And I think the big thing to remember here is that in 1965, life expectancy was only 70. Now, if you are in good shape in your early 60s, you're going to be here around till your 80s. And the number, to just kind of ground our conversation, the median retirement savings for people 55 to 65 in this country is $60,000. So you're going to live 20 years, you got $60,000. And I think we should also add the point, Sian-Pierre, you're making. This is not just, baby boomer issue. Gen Xers are not going to have, pensions.
Right.
Millennials are not going to have pensions. So on the economic security front, I know that at the end, the two of you are living together now. Is that talk about that?
Gosh, yeah. The economic, to learn that for me to learn that my mom had $600 in her bank account, and that's really all she had aside from Social Security, which, we all know is paltry in terms of, the rising costs of living in this country, was shocking. And, we don't talk about finances enough, as well as aging. Interestingly, they are intricately linked, because, there are so many young people who don't know what's going to happen for their parents, and it takes them till the last day to figure out, oh my God, I need to be a caregiver in a financial sense. And then we're all struggling. I mean, I had, some $30,000 in college debt, and that was on the low side for a private university. Most of my peers are, especially if they're going to grad school, et cetera, like they're saddled with $150,000 debt. And that was for education. And that's something that our parents didn't have, right? And those numbers. And so it is going to be a lot worse for us. And so, we made the decision that it made the most sense for my mom to move in with both me and my partner. From a practical sense, of course, there was like the rollout of the film, which made sense for us to be together. But from a financial sense, it has worked out extremely well. I mean, we share everything. And we are part of a New York Times profile all about sort of the reverse boomerang effect, which is all of these older people that are actually moving back in with their kids and not vice versa. Because from an economic sense, if they have, if their kids have kids, it makes more sense to have a parent around to sort of help raise the children versus sort of sending them off to school. And so I think we will see that trend, continue as the middle class and the lower classes continue to get squeezed. We are going to have to work together as a family unit, which unfortunately is anti-American in the cultural sense. We so often think we're just going to send our parents off and live our own lives, but the economics of it, that doesn't work out anymore. We need to invite them in. And truly, beyond the economic stuff, there is so much beauty in living with your parent. And I can say that from a first-person perspective. I've had multiple roommates. And truly, my mom is the best person that I've ever lived with, aside from my partner, but don't tell or him that.
No, and I think I read that there are already 1.5 million millennials who are chipping in or having their parents live with them. And so this trend that you're talking about, that's, I think, related to the economics of aging, we are going to see it. And we need actually the design of housing to be responsive to it, because the housing stock is still built like it was in the 1950s, where you had a nuclear family. So there's one bathroom, one big bedroom, and then 2 bedrooms for little kids, which doesn't work if you have 3 or 4 adults living together.
That's right.
So, ageism was a big theme, economic security was a big theme, and we touched some on this caretaking role that I think we have not, we're just now, I think, starting to really grapple with. When you look at the cost of my senior care housing, it's like 7,000-8,000 a month, you know.
Yes.
Right.
And since COVID, it's more crisis than ever, the situation.
Yes.
Have another nursing home COVID disaster. Never.
So talk about what's happening now and what's next for the film, what's next for the two of you.
Yeah. Well, we're like, since the rollout of the film, we've been talking about care a lot. I mean, you're seeing in the news this idea of, an infrastructure bill, which is being passed, and care as infrastructure. So I continue to just talk to folks about, care as on a spectrum. If there was any more time to show care for your community, it is, during a pandemic. And so, for me and my mom, my mom is completely able and independent and free-willed. And so I provide care really in a emotional and a financial sense. But, care runs the spectrum. There will be a time where, I will have to provide more, serious care for my mom. But I am now prepared for that because of the early care giving I have learned about, at this moment. And so I really am urging as many people as possible to start thinking about, who do they want to care for? Who do they care for? And how are they showing that care? So there's that. The ride though, to bring us to today, it's been a true journey. Like, why don't you speak about the change since, the film has rolled out?
Well, I mean, really, all over the world, not to be big-headed, but people write to me from all of this happened to my father, this happened to my mother. When I get old, I don't see my daughter. I wish I had my son, I wish I had a son like you. We can. I never expected it to happen to me. I thought I was going to be in my job forever, living in my 37-year apartment forever.
Yes.
But we need to start the conversation sooner in families. They need to start talking about it in schools. They need to start talking about it in college and medical doctors and all that. All these little things are together. And certainly in workplaces, I will not die until there is a handbook. And the last page of that handbook tells you, not what it says on the first page, 3 weeks vacation, 2 sick days, 401k, last page. This is what will happen on your last day of work.
And that's something that we're fighting for with our impact campaign and it's interesting how few organizations are willing to do it. But, it's sort of equalizing the employer-employee relationship so that, when you're let go or restructured, like my mom was, that you're not giving 2 weeks pay after over a decade of work and just told, well, best of luck, see you later. It's just we've gotten to this place in this country where workers are giving their all, but with nothing really in return. You spoke earlier about there being no pensions anymore, right? Like that was something that kind of got employees to want to work for jobs because they felt safe. They felt like they would have a future with this company. And now these companies are no longer willing. And so what my mom wants is what happens on your first, here's what happens on your last. Can there be resources as to, where to find another job? What can I expect on my last day? None of that is in writing for most employees because the employer doesn't want but we should hold them to the fire. And so we're really trying to fight for that with our impact campaign.
And when you think about it, very soon, 1/3 of American workers are going to be over 55. So, this is not some small group of people. This is everybody. If you're not, what I would say to the audience, if you're not in this situation yourself, somebody who is, a family member or a dear friend who used to be okay and is not okay now. Because I think one of the things people often think is, elder poverty is about people who they've been struggling all their lives and now they've got a rough time of it in old age. What we're talking about today and what's in this film is people who were doing okay. You know, they were living a life, it was going along, and now
Yep.
they're looking at downward mobility, often for the first time.
Yep.
So let us wind up by saying what's happening next with the film.
So what's happening? So we will be on PBS on Independent Lens on November 22nd at 10 p.m. That is our debut broadcast. And you know, for the filmmakers out there, it's been a journey to try and get this, you know, small little film out into the world, and we are so happy that with some fight and with our audience and the community that has rallied behind us, that we're having such a huge debut. You know, like that is an award-winning documentary series, and so it just touches me that my mom will be, you know, seen by 2 million or more folks in this country, and that this story will be shared because, you know, to your point, you know, we talk about older people as those who are, you know, poor and have done everything wrong. And so, you know, they're suffering. And then there are those who are really wealthy and, you know, living this golden age. But the fact is that most people live in the middle, that most people look like my mom, do everything that she has done to try and survive in this country, but their stories aren't the ones that are being told. We're really watching the older people on the yachts living their best life, or the people under a bridge. I'm so happy that like this middle ground of folks here in this country can actually see their stories, you know, on public television. And so that will be next for us. We're running this impact campaign. If you go to dutyfreefilm.com, you can learn more about it. And in the meantime, my mom is getting, she's on Instagram doing her thing at Rebrexit, REBREXIT, where she has 50,000 followers and is like a new face to Dr. Scholl's, and like, you know, things are really happening. So we're just so happy that like this film has been able to provide opportunities, not just for us, but also to spark conversation. That's super important.
Parents, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us, Elizabeth. This has been amazing. And thanks for the work that you do always.
Always. Thank you.